everyone, to the Comedy Sports Podcast, starring your host, Christine Rollo Capriolo. And now it's my deep honor to introduce my best friend, Bo, Mr. Happy Johnson.
Welcome to the Comedy Sports Podcast. I'm very excited to have this gentleman here right in front of me right now, ready to be interviewed, Mr. Bo Johnson. Bo, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to be here.
I am thrilled to have you here. Your name has come up.
This is the first time I've ever been in a pod being cast.
Yes, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's close. It's very close quarters.
It is, but there's sun coming in. We're good.
Okay.
Your name has come up many times as a great teacher at ComedySportz. So I'm going to get into that eventually.
That's sweet.
Yes, but I want to begin with, where were you born and raised?
Okay. Boy, that's going way back. I was born actually in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Really?
So, yes, as well as Dylan Bolin. I don't know if you've interviewed Dylan
I have
at all
not yet, but you were born in the same area as Dylan Bolin.
We are both Hoosiers.
Okay.
Both of us managed to escape at fairly young ages.
Okay.
Because my dad was down there. He met my mom while he was working at Alice Chalmers. Okay. But he had started at Alice Chalmers in Milwaukee, had been transferred down. They met and married. They had 3 kids very quickly, and then Chalmers wanted to transfer him back.
Okay.
So when I was 4 years old, we all came back to Milwaukee, which
all right.
And if you know the difference between Milwaukee and Terre Haute, then you know that I really lucked out.
Okay.
So people from Terre Haute, maybe if they ever hear that, are going to send me death threats. But
I'm sure all 3 of them will not be listening. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? Did you have a dream job that you thought about?
Well, I think aside from all of the silly things that all young boys want to be, like astronaut and pilot, I loved music at an early age. I remember when I was in 2nd grade, I got to sing the solo of Silent Night for my 2nd grade choir concert.
Okay.
So I when I was real young, I thought I was going to probably go into music, which I to some extent have at this point.
You do. You're in a band.
I'm playing in a band, play guitar and congas and sing. But in those days, I thought I might go into musical comedy, like Broadway kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then as I got older, I thought, well, it's probably safer to become a music teacher. So I'll learn music and also get an education degree, and then I could teach music. And then I got to high school and started to really look around at the kind of people that I would end up teaching.
I'm a high school teacher. I'm quite aware.
And I suddenly realized that, no, I don't want to teach anybody like this. These people should be dropped on a desert island. The ones that survive, we should allow back off again.
Right.
Which they then made a reality television show out of, except that they're not high school kids, and we don't just leave them behind, which I think we should.
Right. My great-great-aunt, Sister Mary Michael, little Italian nun, and if you were an Italian-American in Milwaukee years back, probably had her as a teacher, like Angelo Farina did, Joe Cortese did.
Wow, really?
Yes, and she used to tell me that from the age of 13 through 19, we should just drop kids off into the middle of the woods and then pick them back up when they're 19 because they are beasts at that age.
Yep.
So you're very correct in your analysis.
She and I are of the same opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you didn't end up becoming a teacher.
No, I did not end up becoming a teacher. I got out of high school and decided by that point I had also done a lot of acting in high school.
Okay, so you were in the plays and stuff at school?
I was in the plays. I started
musicals?
out in the musicals because I wanted to sing, but then I also started to get into straight plays. When I was a senior, I played Grandpa in You Can't Take It With You.
Okay.
And I had a great time, was in a number of other plays. And, the annual forensics festivals would always have a dramatic competition.
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of those. And
what high school are we talking?
Whitnall. I went to Whitnall High.
Okay.
Out on the southwest side. And so I decided I would go into theater. And actually started out at UWM, Didn't do real well at UWM, and I won't go into all of the different reasons, but it didn't help that I was commuting from home.
Sure, that's hard.
I tended to still go out and party with all my old high school friends and didn't concentrate on school very much. So I dropped out, and I spent about 2 years actually being a delivery truck driver for George Webb's restaurants.
George Webb's had delivery drivers?
Yeah, from their warehouse. They have to get their food.
I thought you meant like I can order and then you deliver the food to me.
Oh no, this is way before.
Right, that's why I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Way before that. No, I would drive a truck out of their warehouse.
I see.
And deliver hash browns and cans of ketchup and and frozen hamburger patties and all of that stuff.
So then how in the world do you become familiar with ComedySportz? How does that enter into your life?
Okay, well, it's a long story, Christina.
Well, we got time.
So I'm still going through this whole process. So after I finally realized that I was ready to go back to college, I transferred up to University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire.
Okay.
And really was much more successful at concentrating on what I wanted to learn and being a better student.
Okay.
And while I was there was when I was in my senior year, I had a professor that I had been working really closely with, and he let me set up an independent study where I would essentially learn as much about improvisation as I could, and in the course of doing it as a workshop with other students that were a part of the theater department.
Okay.
So we would meet like 3 times a week during class hours, and so this was like I was getting 3 credits for leading this workshop.
Okay.
And so I had read all of my Viola Spolin texts and all of that stuff, and then we started playing freeze and started playing all sorts of different games. Okay. And so that's where I had initially started to get experience with doing improv.
Yeah.
And then I graduated and came back to Milwaukee. Started to get involved in local theater. Okay. The first theater company that I became a part of was a theater known as Clavis at back in those days. No longer around, and this again is subject for a whole different podcast about Milwaukee theater. But Clavis eventually sort of evolved into what is now Next Act.
Oh, okay.
And there's a whole story about that, but you're not interested in it. But while I was working with Clavis, that was at about the same time that Dick had started Theatre Sports, which is what it was called at the time.
Right.
And so he was getting press about it. And as part of his press, he was saying that, because they wanted to play up the competitive aspect.
Right, the sports aspect.
The sports aspect. Mm-hmm. So he was saying, and he was kind of trash talking. He was saying, I'm training all of these people in improv, but it's a sports competition. So if any of you out there think you can form a team and take us on, you go right ahead.
You're like, challenge accepted.
Right. And at the time, I was working as technical director, I think, for a show called ER, Emergency Room. And one of the guys who was in that show that I got to know and became friends with was a guy named David Paul Knutson, who had gotten his theater degree, I think, from Stevens Point.
Okay.
And he also had done some improv at college.
Okay.
And then his sister, Sue, and a very close friend of mine, Lori Birmingham, who... God love her, passed a few years ago, but she will always be really close to my heart.
Yeah.
And then another friend of mine, Jenny Wanasek, and a young man named Nolan Truitt, because ComedySportz in those days, Sean McKenna was a part of it, and when he was only about 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah,
right.
He was the youngest.
He was very young, and we were like, okay, we've got Nolan, who was actually like this. He used to love to work backstage as like a props person and stuff. But he was also a really funny kid and very creative. And we were like, okay, let's have our version of Sean McKenna. So that'll be Nolan.
Right.
So the 6 of us got together and started practicing improv games. And we were like, yeah, we're going to take you on. Right?
Nice.
And so Dick set up a show that was initially between us, and the name that we picked for ourselves was Fred's Lounge.
Fred's Lounge.
Right. Okay. We went out and found a half dozen used bowling shirts at a Goodwill. And then had our nicknames, embroidered into them, right, and with the bowling balls on the back. And we came in, and at first Dick set up a show where we played against one of his workshop teams, one of his teams in training.
Okay.
And we smoked them.
Yeah, you did. And where was this? Was this at Cults?
This was at Cults. This was
Okay.
in the back room of Cults. And actually,
Okay.
I'm trash talking somewhat now too, because the people that were playing on that opposing team actually, of course, became very good friends of mine.
Sure.
Phil Larson and Sean McKenna, and
Yeah.
a lot of people that I ended up then eventually doing comedy sports with all of the time.
Right.
So anyway, so then because we had won, the deal that we had made with Dick was then we would go on to play as Fred's Lounge against one of his sort of feature show teams.
Right.
You know, because back in those days, the two teams were always the Dendrites and the I'm forgetting what the other
Sparklers?
Sparklers. It was always the Dendrites and the Sparklers.
Still is.
Is it?
It is.
Oh God,
I
love
was
them.
a dendrite last night, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so Fred's Lounge came in and
Yeah.
played against the Dendrites.
Okay.
And we smoked them.
Not that you're keeping track, but that's twice. Okay.
But then, but of course the Dendrites, that Dendrites team I think was Marvin Berkowitz, and it was Bob Orvis and Brian Green. So it was also, I mean, we had a really good time. By that,
I bet.
By that time, even though we came in being a little cocky and really thinking that that they were really interested in a sports competition of improv.
Yeah.
As we got to know them better, then it all became that, like, okay, you need to sort of make it clear that the sports thing is not really the thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Nobody's really trying to beat each other here. And I certainly hope that I'm not giving away the secret of what comedy sports is, but I think people started to get it long ago,
Yeah.
even the regular, audience members. It's
Right.
like nobody cares who wins.
Right. That's just kind of part of the format.
Right.
Yeah.
But when we first came, we thought that everybody cared who won.
okay.
you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, and then Dick, as soon as he saw what was happening, also realized that, like, I can't allow people to be just their own team. I have to make sure that I create a business where, every week we've got the Dendrites versus the Sparklers. But, I know what I need to do. I need to make sure that nobody's ever always a Dendrite,
Okay.
or always a Sparkler. What I have is a very talented company of people.
Right.
I give them a shirt of each color.
Yeah.
And then each week they just switch off on different teams and end up playing, so that each week every person is playing with a new group of people.
Yeah.
So that everybody always feels like that it's, the team is really the show.
Right.
The show as a whole.
Absolutely.
So, but Fred's Lounge is kind of what taught Dick that.
Oh, look at that. I
Yeah.
love that story. I love it. Mm-hmm. So then how did you go from, like, did he invite you in then? Like, hey, this is
Yes.
awesome. You got to come with us.
He invited us all in. Everybody
Okay.
that was on Fred's Lounge. Not everybody accepted the invitation. Jenny was way busy doing a lot of other theater stuff. She directs a lot and still does these to this day.
Yeah.
And is also a wonderful actress. And Lori Birmingham actually did a couple of comedy sports shows.
She did, yeah. What year are we talking that this whole Fred's Lounge thing happened? Can you remember?
For you listeners now, I'm making a screwed up face. I think it was 1984.
84. I was going to guess 84.
Yeah.
Was I right on that?
Could have been late 83, though. Could
Okay.
have been fall of 83.
Okay.
But by 84, I was doing comedy sports pretty much every weekend on a regular
Regularly
basis.
then. You were in the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people that came from Fred's Lounge that really then became regular company members for a few years were myself and David Paul Knutson and Sue Knutson, his sister. Lori did it occasionally, and her ex-husband, PJ.
He is Mr. Voice on our podcast.
PJ's Mr. Voice.
He is. He's
Okay.
doing all the intros.
They were still married at the time.
They were.
And even after getting divorced, they remained very close
Best friends till the day she passed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he became stage manager,
Mm-hmm.
and actually I think he was the first person that Dick hired to actually be a stage manager
Yes.
to really sort of like keep the place organized and
Yeah.
on time and and clean the green room.
The dreaded green room.
Empty the cigarette butts out of the ashtrays, things like that. Poor PJ.
Poor Peach. He's still scarred from the things he saw in there.
Oh, well, he's scarred from so many things.
So what do you remember most about those days playing at Cults with the new crew that you're involved in here at ComedySportz?
Well, the thing is, it really became my lifestyle for a lot of years after that. Because I mean, I still did theater occasionally, but all of a sudden, like just knowing that every weekend I was going to do Friday and Saturday night ComedySportz shows.
Yeah.
And I became very good friends with all of these people that, you know, initially we thought we were in competition with. But
Right.
I love Bob Orvis. I
Yeah.
love Brian Green. Brian Green and I still have this thing to this day where if one of us sees the other one before, you know, we sneak up on each other.
Right.
And do this thing called the Teddy mug.
The Teddy mug?
Yeah. So if I'm sitting at the bar, and usually at ComedySportz, but anywhere in town, if all of a sudden Brian Green realizes, oh, there's Bo, I see Bo, he will sneak up on me, or I will do this to him if I manage it, but he's always better at it. Teddy was a maitre d' at ComedySportz who had this very sort of creepy way of invading your personal space.
Okay.
So after a show, a lot of times we'd be at the bar having drinks, and Teddy would come up and he'd start rubbing our shoulders, and he'd be like, "Oh, you were so good tonight. You were really good, weren't you? You thought you really, I bet that you got the ladies really going with that one. They're hot for you." You know, and the whole time he's doing this little
Rubbing
shoulder
your shoulders
massage. So
and
that became what we still call the Teddy mug, right? So you gotta take, Brian and I have to take each other by surprise, and we have to jump up, we have to get behind the other one and grab their shoulders and start digging in. And, who's this? Who are you with tonight? Huh? Having a wild time, I bet, huh? What do you think you're up to now? Oh, you're so funny.
To this day, you guys still do
To
this?
this day.
Does Teddy know about this?
I don't know. No, Teddy doesn't know about this, and you know, I have no idea where Teddy is these
Teddy.
days.
Bless Teddy. It's an ongoing joke forever. Oh my God.
I mean, he was on in years at the time, and this is going back 1984, so this is going back 35 years now.
Right.
You know.
Oh my God.
35 years.
No, this has been so amazing interviewing people from, you know, starting with Dick and Bob, talking about the beginning of ComedySportz.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just been incredible. And I love hearing the stories. These are incredible stories. And Teddy, well, I tell you, I'm going to bring him in here if I can find him.
You might have to resurrect him.
Just to get the shoulder rub.
Wait, but you've got an aunt who's a nun. She's got powers, I'll bet.
Well, she is past two, but I bet she could bring him with her.
We'll do a seance.
We could do a seance with Teddy and Sister Mary Michael. God, that would be quite the experience. Oh my God.
Did you hear that table knock?
Oh my God, the table's moving. It's happening. Oh God. I feel my shoulders being squeezed. Oh my God. So at some point throughout you performing with ComedySportz, it's now a huge part of your life.
So now it has become like my. I'm not that I really barely made enough money to pay my bills. You know, I was scratching at other things too. I actually spent some time being an apprentice in an upholstery shop for a while. Yeah. And some, you know, I mean, when you're a member of the gig economy all your life, like there's just all sorts of ways that I had to find to make money. But, you know, my whole social life really for quite a while became the theater sports. Dick and Bob and Marvin and you know, and like Carol Bauman and I became a couple and lived together for many years. And I honestly have to say that I think because I had gotten into improv comedy, and this is no slight, you understand, to the theater community, but I think that I had gained an impression as, oh yeah, he's one of those improv comedy guys. And so the theater community for a while started to take me less seriously.
Really?
Yeah. So I became I did not get used much in the theater community for quite a few years, and can I digress a little?
Sure.
Because this is getting away from comedy sports and theater sports, but it wasn't, and I ended up doing just theater sports for a long time until Monty Davis, God love him, who was the artistic director and founder of Milwaukee Chamber Theater, came to see a few theater sports shows.
Okay.
And he saw me do like improv Shakespeare and stuff like that. And he recognized the fact that yes, I was a good improv comedian, but I was also a talented actor.
Okay.
And the first thing that he called me about, he contacted me and asked me if I would be a part of the cast for a production of Travels with My Aunt, which is based on a Graham Greene novel. And so getting back involved with chamber theater through that, and then he cast me in a number of other things kind of quickly after that. And then that's when the theater community around town started to remember who I was.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So then for a while, then I started to sort of get my foot back into both.
Okay.
So I would do comedy sports whenever I was available, but if I did manage to get cast in something else, I wouldn't do comedy sports for the run of that particular show, or sometimes I would do a show and then still manage to make the late night show, the 10 o'clock. And then by that point, we had also started doing Dead Alewives.
Right, I was going to ask about that. Your involvement in the Dead Alewives. That started in, 90?
Well, we lasted for 12 years, and we ended in 2000. So actually 1988 is when we first kind of started putting that together.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
So for a long time, I was doing both. But the thing I loved about Dead Alewives, comedy sports is really fun with this 3-4 minute games.
Right, a 3 or 4 minute scene or a game.
Yeah, and stuff that really has that has a lot of guaranteed shtick to it that will play. So like Arms Expert or Spelling Bee, things like that. But then the other side of the coin, which I also really wanted to do, was the more long form stuff.
Okay.
Like just one example of a Dead Alewives game that actually took up the entire show. So we would only do it occasionally.
Yeah.
But it was called Audition Play. Okay. So at the top of the show, you would ask for the title of a play, right? Never been created before. Ask for the name of a couple of characters in that play, and like some primary conflict. Once you got all of that stuff, one of the members of the Dead Alewives that night would become the director. Okay. And the first act was holding auditions. Okay. So the director would call people in and say, "Oh, thanks, I got your resume." And so a lot of times Kurt would come in playing some particular kind of character, and then as director, you would let them. You would, in an improvisational way, set up the scene that they were auditioning for as if that was in the script already. Okay. Right? So this is a very important moment in the show. I just want you to read this. Oh, and can we have let's see who else is here for auditions. Patrice Ignatowski. Could you read the woman's part in this scene? And then the director says, "Okay, so this is the really pivotal moment where Marcus realizes that Patrice has lost actually both arms, but has been, because of her really great prosthetics, he has never really realized it before." So the director really essentially is kind of creating just little moments of the play by what he improvises in terms of how they're going to audition, what they're going to do to audition. Everybody reads different little scenes in different moments. Then you go into the dressing room and you have basically the 10-minute intermission to write everything else around the scenes that you've already created. And create the whole play with all these connecting. Come back for the second act and create the whole play. That's great. And the first thing that you do is you announce what the cast is so that everybody finds out who's going to play what character. So you may have had like Kurt come up and play a different character, but it works out better to have Mundy actually play that character. So Mundy had to be really listening to whatever Kurt said. Right. Yeah. And then you create the whole play, and then you take your curtain call, and that's the whole show. Oh my God, it's brilliant. It was really fun. It was, but that's the thing, that kind of long form is really jumping off a cliff. Oh, absolutely. And And that's what I loved about the Dead Alewives was the
Yeah.
opportunity to do that and still do the stuff where, for 3 minutes you can do arms expert and,
Right.
pick somebody's nose and, and all of those bits.
Well, I was a groupie back in high school watching you guys, the Dead Alewives, a phenomenal group of performers. And I remember all the musical, the theme songs you all created for all the different games you played.
Yes.
And did that just happen? Did you?
Yeah. Mundy a lot of times was the person that would make a lot of those up, or Peter. Peter would make a lot of them up.
Okay.
It'd be like, freeze, stop what you're doing. I said, freeze, stop what you're doing.
Or I remember the growing and shrinking machine.
Yep.
I still have a foo chow.
I don't
Remember the
even
giveaway? It was a doll head on a springy stick, and it lights up, and you guys had a whole song.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We gave away so many different
So
things.
much crap. It was great. It was a great group. So now through all this, at some point you're teaching down there as well. You're teaching workshops, which is why I'm so thrilled to have you here, because your name has come up a lot as being an incredible teacher of improv.
Well, I'm honored. When I first got involved, the primary teachers were John Bank and Karen Kohlberg and Dick. But after the first couple of years, and their whole workshop business started to grow, and I had already let Dick know that the reason I learned the way that I learned improv in the first place was because of that college experience that I had doing the independent study.
Yeah.
And Karen, by that point, Karen had moved on, and John also had a regular job as a medical technician, that's a vague term. It was something more specific that is actually much more prestigious. I just can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Okay.
And so neither one of them really had a lot of weeknights open to. Well, like I say, Karen was gone, and John didn't really have a lot of weeknights open anymore, and Dick was more busy at that point running the business.
Right.
And I said, I've done some teaching. I did this at the college level, and I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
And we set up a process where I think it was Monday nights, we would have beginner level, and I would teach a 6-week beginning level course that was really just about learning the basics of yes and not being afraid. And trying not to think and just reacting, and develop, having a process from beginning to end during those 6 weeks. Where work was a part of it, creating getting used to using mime and watching each other using mime to create a common space together, an environment, and then using the things that somebody else created in that environment.
Yeah.
Miming those as well and using those, to make sure that they're an integral part of the scene.
Right.
Because the where you are can give you so much inspiration in terms of what to do and what to do with it. So the 6-week process, like I say, was about becoming confident, about getting better at listening to each other, about getting over your fears, just realizing that the best thing to do is just go with your first instinct. Don't think about it. Take the thought process out of it. So that would be a 6-week beginning course, and I would teach those on Monday nights. Once I had gotten through actually one of those, then we created a second level Tuesday night, come whenever you want for as long as you want. You just re-up your admission, your membership every 6 visits.
Okay.
So, if you visited 6 times, now I need $60 more.
Yeah.
From you.
Yeah.
And that helped me a lot, actually. Then that's when I, for a while, and with Bob starting the remote shows and doing private company stuff on luncheons and things, for a while, ComedySportz was like, I could maybe just not worry about getting theater work because this is doing okay for me.
Right.
So we had the regular, and that's really what the Dead Alewives grew out of. Everybody that had been in the Tuesday night regular workout that loved coming really every week. Like there were some people that would just drop in.
Sure.
But Monday would come every week. Ian Roberts, I don't know if that name has come up, but
It
Ian
just came up earlier with a different interview. Yeah, with
yeah.
Kurt.
So Ian went on to be one of the founders of the Stand Up Citizens Brigade.
Okay.
He actually has a much bigger profile and greater reputation than I do, and has actually at this point been in a number of movies. People have seen him.
And he started UCB?
He started UCB, yeah, or at least was one of, I believe, Amy Poehler and
Amy
Ian
Poehler.
and I think 2 or 3 other people were the original founders of that company. But in any case, the Dead Alewives, all of the Dead Alewives were meeting every Tuesday night regularly. So Mundy, Peter, Kurt, Sean. Sean didn't have to pay because he was already a regular comedy sports guy. So that those people could always drop in when they felt like it.
Right.
And then Rob Schraub and Dan Harmon had taken workshops. They had taken my beginning level, and they started coming to Tuesday nights on a regular basis. Anybody I'm forgetting as far as original members? Dead Alewives? It was 7 of us. But even before that, actually, we had first started, I don't know if this has come up at all, but before we actually winnowed it down to what we then called the Dead Alewives, we started doing a public long-form improv show at the Old Stone Toad.
Yes, the Old Stone Toad.
The Old Stone Toad on Broadway. And we initially called it Blabs LeBlah and her Improv Toadies.
Say that one more time.
Blabs LeBlah and her Improv Toadies.
Okay. What a wonderful name for a group.
I'm glad you like it. In retrospect, once we became the Dead Alewives, a lot of us were like, "What the hell?
What was that?" I don't know. I'm
Blabs
getting a tattoo of it on my butt, though, so I'm so excited.
But because the Dead Alewives was just, these are the 7 guys that are the Dead Alewives.
Yeah.
Blabs LeBlah was more like an opportunity to publicly show off what was happening on Tuesday nights privately in the workshops.
Okay.
But just charge an admission for it, and then let people come in and watch, and then we would essentially do what we were already doing on Tuesday nights.
Right.
And we had left it open to anybody that had ever done Tuesday night advanced workshops.
Okay.
So we started doing that, I think, on Wednesday nights, because I was doing Monday night beginners, Tuesday night advanced, and then Wednesday night at the Stone Toad. But Wednesday night at the Stone Toad, because we had left it open invitation, was just chaos.
Oh.
I mean, sometimes it was just too many people.
Okay.
And people would show up and they'd maybe get 30 seconds on stage, and if it didn't go over well, and Kurt would walk up and take them by the back of the neck and pretend to snap their neck, and they'd fall over dead, and then that's how we'd get people off stage sometimes. So we, there came a point where it's like, the only way to make this work is to make it a tightly defined. This is the group.
These are the people in the
work
group.
with. Yeah.
Okay.
So Rob Schraub, Dan Harmon, Peter, Kurt Scholler, Mundy Carter, myself, and Sean McKenna.
Right.
That was the original.
That was
7.
the Dead Alewives.
Yeah.
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 And a phenomenal group. You still talk to all those guys?
Peter was in town a while ago. I had dinner with him. Mundy and I talk to each other as often as we can.
Yeah.
He and Karen are living in North Carolina.
I heard that, North Carolina, yeah.
Yeah, they're fairly busy these days, but they come into town for different things, and we definitely get together when we can. Rob and Dan,
They're off doing their thing in LA.
They're big time news these days.
Yeah.
So I don't hear from them much, and I'm always afraid if I try to get in touch with them, they're just going to think that I'm trying to schmooze for something. And I'm
sure not.
I don't know. That's my personal paranoia, but I'm always afraid of coming off as a schmoozer.
Right.
So, and Peter, and then Kurt, I just talked to. So occasionally I'll hear from, and Sean. I've seen more regularly. He's been coming into town a lot.
Yeah.
So,
in
fact,
excellent.
Is he living in town now? He's been going kind of back and forth.
Between here and the Twin Cities,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. So what do you think was your philosophy with teaching improv?
Confidence, listening. Actually, I've kind of already said a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because there are just some very basic exercise. Because of a lot of it crosses over into regular theater stuff.
Yeah.
So trust. But more than anything, and this is what everybody in improv will say is the first and most important thing, is yes and.
Yes and.
Did
you think anybody could learn it?
Yes. I do think anybody can learn it. Yeah. Now, can anybody learn it and also be regularly funny? Not so much.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, I think, and it's not, and again, I mean, especially at the beginning level, I always made it very important to be clear to people that it's not about being funny. Funny will come if you're just spontaneous.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are some people who just for whatever reason, their first reaction is a funnier first reaction than other people's.
Yeah, sure.
Other people's first reaction, you give them something and it's like, oh, this is what killed my mother. Oh, okay. Okay, that's where improv becomes therapy.
Oh my. And scene. Right? Okay.
Kurt comes on and snaps them.
Snaps their neck and they're gone now. Thank you, Kurt Scholler. Where did Mr. Happy come from? Was that your nickname embroidered on this bowling shirt? Is it that far back?
That was my nickname embroidered on that bowling shirt. And I honestly have to give credit where credit is due, because that came from me remembering a Robin Williams monologue bit that he had gone on talking about his private parts and saying that he thought that why, all of these different names for it, why not just call it Mr. Happy?
So you took it?
Yeah, and then we started Fred's Lounge, and we were like, oh, well, we all got to come up with nicknames. And I was like, I like that Mr. Happy bit. I'm going to go with Mr. Happy. So thank you, Robin Williams.
Thank you, Robin Williams, R.I.P. Do you still have the shirt?
I do.
Nice.
I do still have the shirt.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
I came across it in the closet. You know how that thing about go through your closet once a year, and if you haven't worn it since the last time you go through the closet, get rid of it, right?
You can't get rid of that.
Can't get rid of that.
No,
go through every year.
I still have my shirts from Madison ComedySportz, which is where I started playing professionally and then came back to Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's where I first saw you, I think.
Yeah, and you came to Madison, and they were, I think, like extra larges, and I weighed maybe 100 pounds, and I was just drowning. I don't know why I had extra larges. I was drowning in these shirts. But yeah, I'll go through my closet.
I remember thinking, well, that girl that's wearing the tent, she's really talented.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
I wonder if she has a body.
What's happening under that tent of cloth? I don't know why. Did I request an extra large? Did I think I was an extra large? I don't know. But I still have them is the point, and I can't get rid of them. Why would I want to? It's just, some things you just gotta save.
Well, because you never know when you have to somehow evacuate the city. Something bad's going on, and you need some tents.
I do. I need somewhere to live eventually, and those tents are going to fit me and my family. My children are small; we'll all fit. So before we end our
we're going to end.
Well, soon I'm going to play a couple games with you. I can sit and talk to you all day, my friend. I'm going to play a couple games with you. You're going to pick two of these sheets of paper in here, and if you don't know, I'm just push them aside and pick a new one. You're going to pick two sheets of paper. Those are all different ComedySportz games.
I have to be honest. The one thing that we haven't talked about yet is how long it's been since I have done improv.
How long has it been?
Pretty much since Dead Alewives broke up, which is now. I will say that I continued to go on teaching improv.
Okay.
So because I became a part of First Stage Children's Theater, and I would teach at their summer academies, and taught a lot of improv to young students there, which I was very proud of. I think they learned. They learned a lot, and First Stage Academy is just a really beautiful place. The energy is great. So I continued teaching improv to students until probably just about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But I haven't performed it myself for a long, long time.
Well, that is the audience's loss, because you are phenomenal. So pick two of these out, and again, I want you to tell me.
We'll see if I've got any chops still.
Which one you would rather play in a show if you had to do a show right now. Which of these two that you're picking? They're all different improv games from ComedySportz.
Well, Forward Reverse I'm fairly familiar with. Shopping Spree, I can't even say that No.
It's a guessing game. You come in, the crowd team leaves, and you get suggestions from the audience, and then they come back in and they have to try to figure out what they're. No, I'm mixing it up. The shop owner leaves the room and then comes back in, and then the players try to get the shop owner to guess what he's trying to sell.
All right. Okay. So that's a little bit like, okay, I get that.
Guessing game, yeah.
Let's do that one. Let's do Shopping Spree.
Really? You'd prefer that one if you had to do a show right now? You like the guessing games?
No. But I feel like Forward Reverse at this point is a game that that requires improv skills that I'm afraid I don't have anymore. Because you do the scene in forward, right? And then you have to do it backwards.
Right. And then it can be forward again and then backwards again.
And then you can do it in you can do certain sections and somebody can say reverse and you have to reverse that section.
Yeah.
And then you go forward again.
Yeah.
God, I haven't done that in so long. Can I look at more?
Sure, pull out a few
I
more.
want to look at all of these. What I want to really do is just tell you what my favorite one is.
Yeah, well, do you remember? What is your favorite comedy sports game?
Oh, I used to love dubbing, but I don't think that plays well on a podcast.
Oh, we're not actually going to play the game.
Oh, we're not?
No.
Oh, you were just,
That's just hypothetical.
Oh, you want to know what I just used to love to do?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll tell you. Okay, first, I love music games.
You do?
Oh, yeah. Back when we came in as Fred's Lounge and we smoked them.
You smoked them, I remember.
Back in those days, they used to do Madrigal, and before we came in, the conceit with Madrigal that they used to do was that nobody was a good singer. They were just, sort of like being goofy, and that, and it was like trying to do something and doing it badly, and that's what's so funny about it. And they had big ego about it, and just. We came in and did Madrigal, and like everybody on that Fred's Lounge team was like. La 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 la, and the next person knew exactly how to harmonize with that, because we could jam, we could really jam.
Nice.
So yeah, any of the things like Madrigal or making up. I remember one of the first things that I did when I was one of the Dendrites, and we made up a blues song about a couple that was in the audience called Jack and Annette. And Bob was backing me up, and Rosie Friedman and Marvin, and it was like, Jack and Annette, she's my pet. And I can't remember what the rest of it was, but it was really fun because they told us about their first date, and they met over a fish fry. Sure. And and then later they ended up taking a bath together.
Well, that's one thing I feel Milwaukee has strayed from. We don't have someone on keys. There aren't very many musical games. I always wish that would come back into the circulation of games during the show. All right, I got one more bizarre game for you. We're going to play the Would You Rather before you go. We want to get to know you a little more, okay?
Okay.
Would you rather...
Oh, can I also say, though, one other game I used to always really love playing was Story Die. I think Story Die is really fun.
Story Die? What do you mean
you
Story Die?
You don't know Story Die?
I know Story, but what's Story Die?
Well, so you've got the ref and they're pointing to one person. Okay, we used to call it Story Die because then if you kept talking when the ref pulled their hand away, then you're out.
Oh, yeah,
so that's how you die.
Yeah.
Okay.
So elimination style.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, last one. Are you ready? Would you rather have an extra mouth placed in the middle of your stomach or have 7 non-removable fingers on each hand?
So 7 fingers on each hand instead of 5.
Correct. Or an extra mouth placed in the middle of your stomach.
Oh, I'd definitely go with the 7 fingers on each hand.
Well, you're banned then. Can you imagine?
I could play guitar like a god. I mean, yeah, imagine the finger picking.
Man, that would be...
And that would be what?
That would be amazing. I'm an artist, and if I had 7, all the paintbrushes I can hold and all the metalsmithing I could do with just more fingers.
Yeah, well, right? I was going to say, the first thing I was thinking of was my carpentry skills because I do some carpentry and 7, yeah. Then I could actually lose a couple.
Then that'd be okay. You'd look like a shop teacher. It'd be fine.
Right. If I slipped on the table saw, I got 6 more. Okay, but playing guitar. even better.
That would be awesome. Well, Bo Johnson, Mr. Happy, this has been such a fantastic time with you. I appreciate you coming in today. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I've had a great time
One of
going
these
back
days,
over old memories.
One of these days, man, I think it'd be cool to get you on stage and do a little music with you.
Oh, that would be fun.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in, Bo. I appreciate it.
Brian Green, I'm out there. And I'm ready to Teddy mug.
The ComedySportz Podcast is produced and engineered by Kyle Hanneken. Our announcer is Mr. PJ Rockwell. Feel free to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Comments and inquiries can be sent to the ComedySportz Podcast at gmail.com. Created and hosted by me, Christine Rollo Capriolo. See you next time.
The ComedySportz Podcast is an independent production made by CSz players. The views and opinions expressed by the podcast host and any guests are their own and do not represent the views and opinions of any CSz location or CSz Worldwide. Vocabulary used by the host and guests is not necessarily representative of the CSz brand.